In our last segment, we discussed how young David Crockett fell head over heels in love with a girl whose name has now been lost to time. And we see that, although we do not know who she was, she left her mark on the young lad's heart by breaking it when he found out from the girl's own sister that she had been seeing some other fella and intended to marry that fella instead of David Crockett. Well, the poor young boy's heart was broken, and with his rifle he went off into the woods to let the tranquility of nature heal his broken heart. And in his wanderings he happens across the property of a Dutch widow whose daughter was out on the front porch tending her chores. Well, at one point she spies David coming way down yonder on the road and hollers at him and invites him to come on over and have a drink with which to cool himself off. While they were sitting there, she informs David that she's heard about the misfortune that befell him, and in fact she goes on to state that if he was to go to the next corn husking, why, she'd introduce him to the prettiest girl in the backwoods. Well, Crockett said he was mighty mortified by her proposal, for he thought the girl meant to have him as her own, and worse than all, he states, she was uglier than a stone fence. But the boy's fears were soon put to rest, because when he in fact does arrive at the corn husking, he meets the future love of his life and his wife, Polly Finley. And after a brief courtship and some resistance from his mother-in-law, the couple marry on August 16, 1806, just one day before Crockett's 20th birthday. Now, in this time, the couple are happy despite hard times. They get along tolerably, renting ground and paying high rent, and Crockett tries his hand at farming, but simply could not turn a profit at it. This, combined with the fact of the matter that they had two sons, John and William, born to them in rather rapid succession, proved to David that he was much better at increasing his family than his fortune. So he figures it's best to go ahead and move further out west where there aren't so many people so he can get a fresh start on life. Also, it's a lot better to make a move when you have less to carry. So, with the aid of his father-in-law, William Finley, the couple head over the Cumberland Plateau and first settle along the Mulberry Fork of Duck and Elk Rivers. And Crockett finds that game of all sorts is in abundance there, except for the one that he loved to hunt the most, bear. So he decides to move his family just a touch further westward to Beans Creek in Franklin County, Tennessee, whereupon he finds that not only wildlife and bear are in abundance, but so is another particular critter that if you aren't careful can cause you about 18 years worth of hardship and misery, and that's a child. Because in that time, in the move from Mulberry Fork to Beans Creek, Crockett and Polly had their third child born to them, a little girl named Margaret. Well, Crockett figures between the abundance of bears and babies, he's all set up in the world and needs nothing else. But unfortunately, the tranquility of family life is going to be interrupted because on August 30th, 1813, down in the Mississippi Territory, which is present-day Alabama, Chief Red Eagle incited the hostile Red Stick faction of the Creek Nation to go ahead and massacre about 500 men, women, and children at a place called Fort Mims. When Crockett heard this, his dander was up, and he figured only war would put it right again. So he tells his wife he's off to join the gathering of the volunteers. But needless to say, Polly begged him not to go. But says Crockett that if every man was willing to wait for his wife to be willing for him to go off to war, why, we get no fighting done, and all be scalped and burnt up in our cabins. Seeing there was nothing for it, Crockett, on September 11th, 1813, heads on to the gathering of the volunteers at Winchester, where he finds himself at the command of Major Russell. And from there, they traveled on to Beatty Springs. And it was at Beatty Springs that Crockett would first be introduced to a man who in later years would play quite a pivotal role in his life, but not exactly a good one. But this and other stories will be continued in the next segments to follow as we discuss Crockett's chapter of his life titled Love and War.